I want to welcome folks back to our 51st weekly Zoom interview. We are going to do 52 all together, one a week for a year since the pandemic started. So we're getting close to wrapping up, and I've been on a break for a while from doing them as John Taylor has interviewed people connected to the History Day program. And today I get to do one of the interviews with someone who was involved with the History Day program here in Maine. So I would like to welcome at this point, Kathryn Busko. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
I am a rising junior at Bangor High School, and I participate in the National History Day program every year. And this year, or last year, for my History Day project, I researched Senator Margaret Chase Smith's famous speech, the Declaration of Conscience.
And we will talk much more about that. So you say you participate every year, and it's a program that's broken into two divisions, junior, which is 6th through 8th grade, and then senior, which is 9th through 12th grade. And you are currently in the senior division. Does your participation go all the way back to 6th grade?
No, not quite that far. It started in 8th grade with a group documentary on the Santo Tomas internment camp during World War II. And then in 9th grade, it was a project on Rosalie Edge, an environmentalist who founded the Hawk Mountain in Pennsylvania. And then last year it was Senator Smith.
Okay, very good. So the first one that you mentioned, the internment camp during World War II, where was that located?
It was in the Philippines. It was the internment of Americans by the Japanese in the Philippines.
Okay.
And we did that because my partner's neighbor was an internee in that camp.
Okay.
So we were able to interview him and bring to light an event that happened that not many people were familiar with.
And what made you originally get involved with History Day? Was it a class assignment, or was it something that was voluntary?
It was my 8th grade social studies teacher made it into an assignment, a year-long project in her class that we would do a National History Day project. And I loved it so much the first time that ever since I've been doing it voluntarily.
Okay. And where did you go to middle school?
I went to James F. Dowdy, also in Bangor.
Okay, very good. And so, as you said, this year you chose as your topic Margaret Chase Smith. And another aspect of History Day is every year there's a general theme. And what was the theme for this past year?
It was communication in history, the key to understanding.
Is that why you chose Margaret Chase Smith, or would you have chosen her even if it had been some other topic?
Well, I've known about Senator Smith since the field trip that we took in 4th grade to the museum. And I always had the idea, once I determined that I was going to do History Day again, that I really wanted to do her for something because she's so well known and so important in Maine. So I was looking for a theme that would work with her. And when I found out about her speech, it seemed like the perfect opportunity.
Okay. So you just reminded me that there is a school in Bangor that every year brings its 4th graders, and they usually come in the fall. So they weren't able to come in the fall of 2020. And for that reason, the name of the school isn't coming readily to mind. So remind me.
Fairmount School?
Fairmount School, the Fairmount School, yes. They bring all their 4th graders to the Margaret Chase Smith Library, which, would you have come over 2 different days? Yeah, because there was so many, it was like 7 grades of 4th graders. So
yes,
would come over the span of 2 different days. Okay. And I'm always curious what young people remember from their visits to the Margaret Chase Smith Library. So you are rising into the 11th grade and you came here in the 4th grade. So it's coming up on 7 years ago that you were here.
Yeah.
What do you remember from your visit?
A couple things. I remember the postcard I got at the end,
Okay.
the roses, and
Mhm,
the elephants. I remember thinking that there were a lot of elephants, but not really knowing why.
mhm,
And then there was a letter when Senator Margaret Chase Smith was running for president. There were the letters that they had the students write. And I remember a particular letter that a girl wrote, which said a woman should be president or should run for president because without women, there would be no men.
mhm.
And that stuck in my mind.
Yes, our librarian, recently retired Angie Stockwell, always liked to share those letters with school groups because I think they were probably, they might even have been younger than 4th graders. They might have been 3rd graders. And it was when Margaret was running for president in 1964, and a teacher at a school in San Antonio, Texas, had the class write about whether a woman should run for president. And many of them, particularly the ones from the boys, say, no way.
Mhm.
Women aren't qualified and competent to hold an office like President of the United States. And so Angie usually saved the one you're talking about to the end to
Mhm.
affirm that there were some people back, some young people back in 1964 who thought it was a good idea that Margaret Chase Smith was trying to do this. And you mentioned the elephants. Do you know now, or do you remember what the elephants symbolize?
The Republican Party.
Yeah.
I understand now.
Yeah.
Back then, I just thought that was a lot of elephants.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the first display cases you see when you come to the museum is over 140 elephants in it.
Mhm.
A souvenir that people would give her, knowing of her connection to the Republican Party. And the other souvenir that people would give her is things associated with the rose. So we have lots of different rose memorabilia. And it's post I just did on Facebook today was when she ran for president in 1964. She had a campaign pin, and it was of a rose with her name down below. And someone just sent us a box full of those campaign pins. So we now have 300 more of them than we already had. So yes, the rose is featured very prominently throughout the museum and even in her home as well.
Mhm.
Very good, good memories.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm always interested in is the formats that students decide to do their history project. You can do a paper, you can do a presentation, you can do an exhibit, you can do a website, and you can do a documentary. Why
Mhm.
did you choose your format of documentary?
Well, originally I chose it in 8th grade, and
Mhm,
I did that because it seemed like the most interesting way to present it.
mhm.
And we had the in-person interviews, so I wanted to feature those.
Okay.
And then after that, I realized that I love researching history, but what I really love is telling the story. And
Mhm,
my favorite way to do that is with a documentary where I get to speak and show pictures and feature interviews and tell the story. So for the next 2 years after that, I went into my History Day project knowing that whatever I did was going to end up a documentary.
And what sort of background do you have in that medium? Have you taken a class on how to do it? And one of the reasons for saying that, and maybe it's just over the years you've gotten better and better, your documentary has very high production values. It's very well put together. Where'd you learn? How'd you learn to do that?
Well, I was familiar with the software iMovie before I made my first documentary,
Mhm,
and just from projects in school.
okay.
So then I used that and I got better at it. And I have a new program that I use now called Final Cut Pro, but it's mostly just pressing buttons and seeing what happens and
Okay.
then experimenting. And as for the quality of the documentary, it has improved as I've done it again and again.
Mhm. Do you have call to use it for other schoolwork that you do, or is it just sort of a History Day format that has given you the opportunity to experiment?
Well, I used to be able to use this format for school projects, but in high school we use Chromebooks, which have no video editing software.
Mhm.
So National History Day has been my opportunity to continue using this software.
Okay. And you, the way it works in Maine, although things have been a little bit disrupted by the pandemic, is that normally there would be a regional competition, which you've had some experience with, and then there'd be a state competition. But my recollection is we just sort of, well, we did have a sort of like, it wasn't so much a regional, I guess we called it like it was
Draft day, I believe.
Draft day, right? Where students could submit what they were working on and get feedback from judges in preparation for then going to the state competition.
Yes.
So you went to the state competition, which was held virtually. We weren't able to hold it at the University of Maine as we would normally do. And you were a winner in your category, which meant that you got to participate in the National History Day program, which normally would be held at the University of Maryland. But it had to be done virtually again this year because of the pandemic. So what was that experience like for you, being able to participate in National History Day virtually?
I've done it both ways because I took first in the junior division 2 years ago, and I prefer it in person, but it's still great to be a part of it. And National History Day has done a lot to make their national competition as present as possible, even while being virtual. So it was interesting to attend the lectures and the award ceremony and the opening ceremony, but it's not the same as being in person.
What were some of the lectures you got to hear?
They were mostly addressing the various parts of next year's theme, which is debate and diplomacy, particularly the diplomacy bit of that. And they were explaining what it meant. Are
you already thinking of ideas for next year?
Yes.
Are you at liberty to divulge, or are you keeping it a secret?
I can say a little bit about it.
Okay.
I am interested in looking at the debate around removing hydroelectric dams, and particularly the Edwards Dam in Augusta, which was removed in 1999. It was the first hydroelectric dam to be removed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Committee against the wishes of a dam owner.
Okay.
And so marked the beginning of a change in people's thinking about what the purpose of dams is and how permanent they are. So I would like to look at the Edwards Dam, but talk about the debate around removing dams in general.
Well, and do you know that it's back in the news because there's 4 more dams that people would like to remove heading up the Kennebec, including the one in Skowhegan?
I did see a lecture about that. I'm just starting my research though, so.
No, it's been very much in the news. In fact, there was just something in the news about it within the past couple of days. And I think this is even true in terms of the Edwards Dam. Basically, the reason for removing them is so that fish can get upstream. So I think that there'll be a lot of material there for you to be able to do your debate and diplomacy presentation for next year as part of History Day. So what did you miss about not being able to go to the University of Maryland for National History Day? What is it about the in-person event that you most missed?
It was the pin trading that I missed the most. Being able to meet students from all over the country and beyond and trade pins. That was my favorite part of the in-person competition, and the part that you really can't recreate virtually. Do
you currently have a collection of History Day pins?
I do.
Do you know how many? Do you know how many you have?
Probably around 50.
Okay.
I learned a lot about how to trade pins and how valuable pins become based on the number that are available, which is research that I would like to take back next year if I make it to nationals again. So I'm really eager to use the information that I learned the first year.
I'm trying to think, because the state coordinator, John Taylor, puts a lot of thought into the pins because he knows how important those are at the national competition. The trading is quite keen. I'm at my desk and I know I have some here somewhere. I'm going to just sort of poke around through some of my drawers while we're talking, see if I can find them. I think some of them have had like a Star Wars theme to them. He usually gets quite creative. He's drafted his father, who is somewhat of an artist, into creating some years. They're not leaking right out. But hopefully we'll be able to get back to in person and get back to the pin trading, real pin trading for next year. Let's see what else I had here on the list. So you already have been thinking about what you want to do for next year. And when will the process start for you? I mean, will you already start in the summer, or will you wait till you get back to school to get going?
I get really busy during the school year with classes and everything else. So my strategy with National History Day is to get a lot of it done over the summer months and then just continue the research into the school year.
I was just looking over at my bulletin board because I think I might have found 2 pins. Oh, I do. I see them now. I'm going to go grab a couple of pins so we can show people. So before he was able to get creative, what we would do is we would sort of ask around for organizations in the state. And there's usually like the lobster board or the lobster fishermen's industry would give us some lobster pins, and we could usually get potato pins or a pine tree pin. So they sort of play off of some of those main icons. So this is History Day 2012. History, let it grab you. So it's a lobster. And Maine history, it's wicked good. It's got a moose, a pine cone, a lighthouse, and a lobster, all the main icons together. And I'm not sure this, oh no, that's something else, I think. This is just says Maine National History Day in Maine. And so this is one, again, where I think John got a little bit more into his own creativity. This is actually a cartoon about Margaret Chase Smith. Got turned into a pin.
Oh yeah, I use that cartoon in my documentary.
It's referring to the McCarthy era after she makes her speech. Yeah. All right, so anything else? One of the things I wanted to know, you did this project on Margaret Chase Smith. It won here in Maine. It went on to the national contest. What sort of questions did the national judges ask you? Do you remember?
The thing I found about at the national level is they always want you to include a lot more information than you have time for. So they wanted to know about Senator Smith, more about Senator McCarthy, more overview about the Cold War in general, which is all stuff that unfortunately in a 10-minute documentary, you just can't talk about in its entirety.
You have a very limited time, 10 minutes. And you also submit a process paper, which talks about the sources that you used, or actually that's the annotated bibliography. The process paper is how you went about doing the project. So there is a little bit of opportunity to add a little bit more information through those formats, but in terms of the actual document per se, or in this case, video, it's supposed to be 10 minutes. It's not supposed to be 10 minutes and 1 second.
Correct. Yeah. And for the longest time, I wasn't even sure if it was allowed to be 10 minutes. So I would make it 9 minutes and 59 seconds.
Did you have to do a lot of editing to get it down to that?
The editing is always the hardest part. A 10-minute documentary is 3 to 4 pages double spaced. And I started with 14 pages after
wow.
I'd gone through my notes to figure out what I thought was important. So it takes me about a week to cut down my documentary script.
So do you start from the script and then think about what the visuals are going to be, or are you thinking about the visuals and then create a script, or is it sort of interwoven both ways?
I find that you can always find pictures to go along with the script, but if you base the script on the pictures that you have, you're going to have an interesting story that maybe isn't totally coherent.
Right.
So I always start with the script and then I look for pictures.
Okay.
Which was slightly easier for this project than some others that I've done because there's just more available. Cartoons, this actual words, the letters, pictures of her. This topic was easy to find pictures for on the internet.
Well, I'm not fishing, but what were some of your best sources for this topic?
The letters available at the library were very helpful because they showed that even though the politicians in Washington were unsure of what to do, there were plenty of people in Maine and other places who looked at this and saw that McCarthy's tactics were not acceptable or conducive to democracy. So it's helpful to see the people express how they felt about this.
Yeah, we have very extensive files of the public's response to her speech, both pro and con.
Yeah, I mostly went through the pro folders, but there were some cons too. And that was very helpful.
And what are you going to take away from this project? What are going to be your lingering memories about Margaret Chase Smith?
That she was incredibly brave, that she was also pretty eloquent. Her speech is really beautiful to read. And that what she did, even though it didn't have any immediate effect that can be traced easily, was incredibly important and a great lens through which to view politics and what democracy should be and how it should be working. And yeah, she concisely states all of the America's founding values in a time when they were most important, or it was most important that people remember them.
Very good. Again, I thought you did a very good job. And one of the things that I'll do when I post this is make sure to give a link so that people can actually watch your video and see how well done it was. So what prompted us to start this series of Zoom interviews was the pandemic and the fact that for a while everyone was locked down and people couldn't come visit the library. We couldn't have the Fairmount School come visit us. So we're trying to think of content to put out there for people to be able to view and be reminded about Margaret Chase Smith and some of the different connections she has in people's lives even today, even high school students such as yourself. So what has the past year and a half been like for you as a teenager during the pandemic?
It's been easier in some ways and difficult in others. In terms of a social, like interacting with other people, it's been really hard, as I'm sure it has been for everyone. But in terms of research, the Zoom interview itself has been very helpful to me, and it's given me a different way to think about interviewing people and talking to people about my topics. But in terms of actually visiting places, it's been much harder, and school has been harder overall.
I'm recalling that I think you were one of our first researchers to actually come back to the library once we were allowed to have the public back. Yeah. So this is a place you were actually able to come to do your research.
Yeah, I was very thankful for that because the letters and the comics, the political cartoons were all so important to my topic. But I was lucky to be able to go to the library, so I'm glad that it was so close. In Maine. It would have been impossible to research anything any further away, I think, just in terms of access.
Yeah. And what do you like to study in school?
History, obviously, but all of the subjects, it depends on the day which one is my favorite.
Okay.
I'm incredibly curious about many things.
And how was school for you for the past year and a half? In person, video, hybrid? How did you do it?
We were in person for most of the year. When there were cases in the high school, we had to go virtual for a week or two at a time. But overall, we were one of the few schools where everybody had the option to be fully in person every day if they wanted.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is pretty rare. Most schools did some sort of hybrid, especially at the high school level. A lot of them did rotating, 3 days on, 2 days off, and then the next week alternating with it. They split the high schools up into groups and so rotated them through that way. So yeah, you sound like you were one of the few that are actually able to have that in-person option the whole year long. So do you feel that your education suffered at all over the past year and a half, or do you feel like you pretty much got the same quality?
I feel that my education, personally, being able to go into school every single day, did not suffer particularly. There were students who chose the hybrid or virtual option within my school, which was much more difficult for them because the school itself wasn't hybrid or virtual, so it was harder for the teachers to make sure they got the same education that all the in-person students got. And then overall, I think it's been basically what would have happened in terms of what I learned had we not been in a pandemic. My teachers worked very hard to give us the same experience. And during the weeks when we were off, we were Zooming every day. They were still giving us work. And I'm very thankful that that's what happened.
As a rising senior, are you starting to think about college?
I'm a rising junior right now.
Rising junior, yeah, rising junior.
Yes. I am starting to think about it, but it's sort of hard to wrap my head around at this point that I'm going to college in 2 years. But I'm starting to think about what that'll look like.
Do you have places that you'd like to go or subjects you'd like to study?
Once I go to college, I would love to continue to actually take a class on video production and continue my work with making documentaries about topics that I care about. I would also like to go to a college that's very liberal arts because I have a ton of interests. And more specifically, in terms of colleges that I've considered, it's basically the ones I've visited the campuses of: the College of Maryland, Wellesley College in Massachusetts, UMaine. But I'm going to think more about that in the coming months.
I'm sure you will over the next 2 years, giving it a lot of thought. Very good. So what does the summer hold for you?
I'm working on my National History Day project for next year. And I don't know, I'm exploring other interests, water quality, which sort of relates to the dam project that I'm working on. I'm doing an internship with Food and Medicine, which is a charity, or not exactly a charity organization. Their message is solidarity, not charity. How can we help people who are in need and who have been laid off, but also fix the system?
Is it like a freestanding organization, or is it an outgrowth of some other organization? It's like affiliated with a church or something?
I've just started my internship, so I'm not positive, but I think it's a freestanding organization that was founded in 2003. in response to layoffs in mills in Maine.
Okay.
It's grown since then.
And is this an internship you got through school?
No, this was through a friend,
Mhm.
and my hope is to create a documentary
Okay.
about their organization.
So I keep hearing this theme of documentary coming up over and over and over again. Are you a student of documentaries? In other words, do you watch people who make documentaries and try to pick up tips? And do you have favorite documentaries or documentarians?
I've watched a couple of documentaries. I mean, over the years, I've watched many through school and
Mhm.
in general, but as for what I do on my own, I do watch some to pick up tips and what I should be doing, but mostly I improvise and see what I can come up with.
Mhm. Is it twice that you've had the opportunity to go to National History Day?
No, it's been 3 times.
Okay. So did it happen to be any of the times when the featured speaker was Ken Burns?
I believe so, but the
Okay.
first year, I think he spoke, but the venue was so crowded that I couldn't
Okay.
get into the opening ceremony, but he did speak virtually at the opening welcoming ceremony this year
Oh,
too.
okay. Because he's probably the most famous documentarian, especially in terms, there's no question in terms of history documentaries, he is the most famous.
Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you for taking the time to share with us your project about Margaret Chase Smith. And I wish you well as you go through the summer and as you head into the new school year and pick up your next History Day project. And hopefully we will see you either virtually or more hopefully in person at the University of Maine for National History Day next springtime.
Mhm. I look forward to it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.